big. That topic is quite extensive, and there'll be more meditation. Has to be. There's so many different points, and so there's so many different points. Sometimes we can just take 5 minutes and go to the next, Okay, so I'll start right away to be able to finish this, because there's a lot. Okay. Oh, thank you. Ooh. All right. It starts off again. Oh, thank you. It starts off again with those main outlines, what patience is, how to begin the practice of patience, categories of patience, how to practice, and a summary. Same structure. So what patience is, actually we think of patience only as patience with harm towards oneself. But there are other types. Patience has a vaster meaning actually in this context here. So not just being patient when others harm us, when others are annoying, obnoxious, etc., but also accepting being patient with suffering if we experience problems. So not created by anyone in particular, at least not obviously, but still being able to bear it with ease, with acceptance. So that's another type of patience. And then the patience of having certitude about the Dharma, which basically means having an understanding of reality. Patience with having understanding about reality, understanding emptiness, understanding our actions have consequences. So, so this is like, you can see it's much faster than what we usually associate with patience. At least the last type doesn't really seem to be a patience as such. But the first type basically is what we usually know to refer to patience. And there are three factors, or these three factors, they're incompatible with the following. The first one, so accepting harm, or being patient in the face of harm or annoyance, like when someone does something that annoys us or that harms us, then the factor that is incompatible here is hostility, or a sense of resentment, dislike, hostility. That is incompatible with patience, the first type of patience. The second type of patience, accepting the suffering arising in one's mind stream, or the suffering that that arises, hostility and loss of courage. So loss of courage and hostility, or resentment again, are the factors that are incompatible with the second type. So if one has patience with suffering, then there's no sense of loss of courage, and there's no resentment, no hostility. And the last type, having certitude about the Dharma, the thing that is incompatible with that is disbelief and dislike. So not believing that our actions have consequences, not believing, so that kind of disbelief or dislike, that is removed by having the patience with regard to the certitude of the Dharma, having an understanding of the Dharma. Okay. So basically the nature of the paramita of patience is that one never allows the mind, so the paramita of patience, or of patience in general, never to allow the mind to engage in any of those three. So neither feeling hostility upon, or resentment upon being harmed, or someone doing something we dislike, nor not feeling hostile of experiencing a loss of courage upon suffering, and not having disbelief and dislike with regard to reality. Okay. So, and again, as with the other paramitas, having achieved the paramita of patience, having gone beyond in the sense of patience, having completed patience, does not mean one has overcome unruly beings. Again, with the generosity, even if one has completed the practice of generosity, or the paramita of generosity, doesn't mean they're no longer poor people. It doesn't mean that there are no longer unruly people, for example. Okay. So how to begin the practice of patience? Well, first the benefits of patience. What are the benefits? Obviously, I think we're pretty much aware of them, but just to cite them again, it protects us from anger and hatred, number one. One does not have many enemies, like people who dislike one. The more patient one is, as a consequence in the future lives, one does not have many enemies. One feels happier and more content. There's no regret at the time of death if one practices patience, say in this lifetime. Other people are inspired. One is inspiring to other people, being patient and being calm in the face of harm or in the face of suffering. One has a beautiful appearance. It's also part of the, like I said, some physical results are sometimes. Beautiful doesn't necessarily mean, it means just pleasant appearance. Like people look at you, it doesn't really mean that you're like,
Appealing.
Pardon?
I think appealing.
Yeah, like an appealing appearance. So not maybe in the conventional sense, because sometimes people look very beautiful, but this is something, we look at them and they look conventionally beautiful, but there's still something not really. And then there are other people, they're not conventionally beautiful, but you like to look at them. They have a kind, sweet kind of, kind of face. So that's said to be a result of patience. It gives us strength to work for the benefit of others, makes us immune to difficulties, hardships and suffering. And we always feel lucky when we meet an obnoxious person because they give us the opportunity to practice patience. Anyway, so there are lots of advantages. And Shantideva says, whoever works hard and overcomes anger is happy in this and future lives. Okay. So disadvantages is that anger is like a fire, that not only do we accumulate negative actions and therefore have to suffer the consequences, but it also destroys a lot of the positive potential that we've accumulated in the past. Then there's no enjoyment, we don't really enjoy things. We're angry with someone, even we're in the most beautiful place, if someone annoys us, we cannot be happy. We don't sleep well, our health is affected, it transforms our looks, the way we act, the way we feel, we lose friendships. And in terms of results, it has two negative results, as already mentioned. So it destroys our virtue and creates future suffering. Okay, so there's a really good reason, definitely not to get angry. But to explain the word anger, anger is oftentimes in Tibetan you find the strongest type. The strongest type of anger, you use the word for that, like anger. But anger also refers to disliking someone. That's already a type of anger. Feeling annoyed, feeling resentful, feeling hostile, having an aversion. All those are types of anger. So when we hear the word anger, it seems to mean like you get red in your face and you just want to go out and beat someone up. I mean, sometimes people say, I don't get angry. But if you ask them, do you ever get annoyed? Is there any time when you kind of feel resentful? Or is there a time when you dislike someone? And they're like, yeah, sure. Well, then that's anger. It doesn't have to be this full-blown. It's the same with the word suffering. It's like taking the most extreme experience of displeasure and then calling anything that is a displeasure feeling and call it suffering. Actually, suffering we associate with something really grave, like, oh my God, I wouldn't say I suffer right now. But you just use the strongest word in order to encompass all these different feelings. So this is similar here. Then also, Shantideva also says, any virtuous deeds such as generosity and worshipping the Sugatas, the Buddhas, you have collected over 1,000 eons are all destroyed in one moment of anger. So 1,000 eons, I mean, we'll speak about how long an eon is during the next topic, there it's explained. But anyway, the point is like over 1,000, I mean over a long period of time, all the merit in one moment of anger can be destroyed. If we are angry with a bodhisattva, actually. As an ordinary person, but I don't know who's a bodhisattva. That's the problem. It's not like you've got like bodhisattva tattooed on their forehead, and I go around and, ooh, with that one I have to be careful. I don't know, anyone in this room could be a bodhisattva. So how do I know? So it's said to destroy a lot of virtue if you get angry with bodhisattva. Why? Because if we harm a bodhisattva or Buddha, but they say it's not really possible to be angry with a Buddha. It's not really possible. So you perceive something else. You don't really perceive a Buddha when you get angry. It's something else that you perceive. So you think you perceive Buddha and you're angry with the Buddha, but that is not possible. With bodhisattvas, it's possible. I don't know. There's something so pure. I mean, I can imagine that if someone is really, really pure, it's really difficult to really get angry with them, right? And if you do get angry with that person, you totally misperceive them. You totally perceive something else. You just really don't see what's actually there. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And then with bodhisattvas, well, there are different levels, and it's apparently still possible to get angry with them, and it destroys a lot of virtue. Why? Because then we have harmful thoughts directed towards a bodhisattva who actually works totally for others. So in a way, if you harm someone, have harmful thoughts, or even worse, actually act out of the anger, and you harm a bodhisattva, you actually harm other sentient beings, all sentient beings, because that bodhisattva is working for the benefit of sentient beings. Does that make sense? Right? So therefore, that's why the kind of argument or the kind of logic here. So anyway, in the Bodhisattva's way of life, it talks about 1,000 eons. But in the supplement to the middle way, in Chandrakirti's supplement to the middle way, it says, therefore, a moment's anger towards a conqueror's child, a bodhisattva, destroys the virtue arising from generosity and ethical discipline accumulated over 100 years, 100 eons. But usually in the commentaries they say that refers to a lower bodhisattva getting angry with a higher bodhisattva. So it's only 100 eons. If you're like a bodhisattva on the path of accumulation and you get angry with a bodhisattva on the path of seeing, then that's still pretty grave, right? So, I mean, bodhisattvas initially still have anger. If you've entered the path, nonetheless, there's still anger, there's still afflictions, and when they arise towards another bodhisattva. Okay. So, to be careful in general, because we really don't know who's a bodhisattva. But of course, the good thing is that anything can be purified, so it should be mentioned here that also Baba Viveka is very clear about any non-virtue, such as the one accumulated when we got angry, can be purified through the 4 powers. But likewise, virtue can be destroyed by anger. So anyway, so therefore we should, since anger is so powerful, we should not get angry even with inanimate things. Things that are not, I mean, like getting angry with the table when you bump into it or something. Even that, we should try and make a habit that this doesn't happen. So anger is said to be really, really powerful. It creates a strong habit in the mind. It's kind of like a strong drug, if you like. So very quickly it creates a strong habit. If you allow your mind to get angry once, it's easier to get angry again. In particular when certain situations arise. So in the relationship, especially in a relationship, if you're in a relationship with someone, and there's like, you live together, there's like a routine, a daily routine, and on a daily basis, similar situations arise, and we after a while generate a habit to get angry right away. Oh, they do such and such, then again we get angry. They do such and such, we get angry. It's a habit now. Every time they do it, we get annoyed. We never solve it, just allow the mind to get angry. And then usually that's when you have a fight, because the other person, of course, if you express that anger or in any way show it, the other person also gets upset, gets angry, and so therefore, good to be careful, especially with those situations, with people we're close to, because of the psychological kind of habits we develop. So just to give you a few quotes that particularly deal with anger. So Shantideva says, there's no non-virtue like hatred and no fortitude like patience. Therefore, earnestly cultivate patience in a variety of ways, whichever way you can, to work with patience, to not have resentful thoughts, to not even have that annoyance, being annoyed, right? Just, someone does something, like right away annoyed. How many times does that happen during the day, right? How often do we get annoyed? That's anger.
10,000 years in a day.
In a day, right? Yeah, I mean, we don't know how much we actually destroy. Yeah, so much hard work over long periods of time. We've accumulated a lot of virtue, and in a few moments it's all gone. I mean, what a waste. It's a bit like you work really hard, make a whole bunch of money, and throw it in the fire. And it's interesting because anger is compared to fire, fire that just burns anything indiscriminately. And Ayasura, or Ashvashgosha, as we already heard him on the Compendium of Perfection. Patience is the armor of great beings. It deflects the errors of wild beings' harsh words. Instead, flowery praises come from them, becoming a beautiful garland of fame. This is basically saying that patience is an armor. You know, if like someone shoots a poisonous spear at you, or like an arrow, patience is like an armor. It totally protects you. And then instead of those poisonous arrows kind of hitting you, they transform into flowers, they say. Well, what it means is then people, when you react patiently, the person who's really angry, their anger just disappears. And instead, it may turn around, and instead of anger, it becomes praise and respect. You know, if someone gets at you and you just go very quietly and very patiently, the other person can't be angry. How long they're going to be angry for? And instead, they may you know, may be transformed into praises and you know, into like this person liking you. And so that becomes like flowers. So the harm becomes like flowers. It becomes like something positive. Yeah. And it's very sweet. Like if you think about it, if you get really, really angry with someone, and this person says, "Well, I'm so sorry. You know, I've really made a mistake. I'm so sorry." How long are you going to be angry for? Right? If they sincerely apologize, it's not like, well, they always say sorry and then they do it again. That's different. But if they sincerely say, "Okay, this was really a mistake. I was wrong. I'm so sorry," you know, and they come down right away. Whoa, okay. And then if there was also a fault from their side, they're also more likely to say, "Well, also it was my mistake," you know. Oftentimes then they can admit, like, "Yeah, I also make a mistake. Yeah, actually, you know." And especially when the anger has totally disappeared, and then you apologize, then the other person is also more likely to say, "Yeah, well, I was also wrong." Okay. Then Shantideva says, great conquerors vanquish hatred and so forth. So they extinguish hatred and so forth that produce all suffering. In contrast, ordinary heroes slay only corpses that are already dead. So that really means a real hero, a real conqueror, works with his or her own anger, right? They don't try to destroy the enemy, because destroying the enemy is like killing a corpse. Because if we try to kill an enemy, actually they're going to die one day anyway. It's almost like you're trying to slay a corpse. You're trying to kill someone who will die one day. I mean, it's not really like you destroy something. This person is already almost dead, you know. We're all in the way of our own death. So killing an enemy is really like, you don't really destroy the enemy, but you're actually killing a corpse. So what is the... And then that person is reborn, etc. And of course there are other reasons where it says then you have lots of new enemies, because the whole family and everyone behind that person. But the actual anger is our own, the actual enemy is our own angers, our own hostility. That is very much alive, and it stays alive. And when we react with anger, we make it even stronger, we make it more alive, it becomes more alive. So therefore this idea of trying to destroy external enemies is like trying to kill a corpse. So they die very soon anyway, so there's no need to destroy them. Okay. And of course the very famous quote from Shantideva, so you cannot subdue all the wild, fearsome sentient beings, all the wild, fearsome sentient beings filling space. If you destroy your own anger, it is like destroying all enemies. We can't destroy all the unruly beings, all the troublemakers in this world, all the obnoxious beings. I mean, even if they're not obnoxious, we may think they're obnoxious. It's not like obnoxiousness is some kind of absolute quality and everyone will find that person obnoxious. It's actually totally relative. And even if there's someone who most people agree this person is obnoxious, well, we can't destroy all of those nutniks. What are they called? Nutniks? Nutniks?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
We can't destroy all nutniks. We can't destroy all, annoying, etc. And then even though if they were all gone, we would still perceive people as annoying, right? I mean, a fault that we have, we may perceive in another person as a greater fault, or a fault that we have, if another person has the opposite, we may perceive that as a fault. I mean, we're very weird in what we perceive as faults. Something that may not actually be a fault. Anyway. So therefore he uses the example of the leather. how could you find enough leather to cover all the earth's surface? Just enough leather to cover your feet is like having enough to cover the entire earth. It's ingenious. I mean, it's amazing. What a good idea, right? I mean, yeah. We are so used to it now, we kind of take it for granted, but I think the first time we heard about this, like, wow, what a good idea. Okay. Anyway, so that's just a bit of a introductory kind of passage, or an introductory section, understanding what patience is. Of course, I think most of us already know, but now to go into how to develop patience. So first of all, developing the patience of so the categories, now the categories, and they've already been mentioned, the three that were mentioned at the beginning. So the patience of disregarding harm done to us, done to you or done to us, then the patience of accepting suffering, and the patience of the certitude about the Dharma. Okay. First, therefore, most important initially, the first two are really initially the most important. So, developing patience of disregarding harm done to us, stopping impatience with those who disarm. So this is again subdivided. So disregarding the harm is divided into stopping impatience with those who harm us, and stopping dislike for the perpetrator's attainments and delight in their troubles. So not only do we have anger towards them, and we need to stop that anger, we need to decrease, or if we can, overcome that anger. On top of that, we dislike whatever good stuff happens to the perpetrator. So in the Lamrim they use the word the harm doer. That's such a weird word. It's not even a word. The person who does the harm doer. Yeah. So it's not. I mean, I don't know. I don't feel so comfortable to say it. Perpetrator.
Is nicer. Somebody you have difficulties with.
I mean, perpetrator is someone who does something negative. Like, of course, it's only imputed. So is harm doer. But harm doer is not even an English word. I don't know. I just don't like the word so much. So I changed it to perpetrator.
You would say the bad guy.
The bad guy. Okay.
Bad guy.
The bad guy. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so to dislike the perpetrator's attainments and delight in their troubles. I mean, we're very likely to do that. If we don't like someone, and here the word enemy is again such a strong word, but like someone we just don't like, who makes us angry again and again, who we don't like. I'm sure we all have a person who's done something to us, has just criticized us maybe, disagreed with us, I don't know, whatever the reason is. Usually we feel anger with them when we bring up whatever they've done to us, and when something good happens to them, we're unhappy. When something negative happens to them, we're happy, right? I think it's commonly true for all of us. Alright, so stopping impatience with those who harm us. Usually we get angry because we perceive others harming us, okay? So we think they are our main enemies. So when we look at something, there's never a sense my anger is my real enemy. The moment they harm, they say something, this is a moment when there's a very strong sense of inherent existence. But we're not aware of it. We're so busy with what they've done to us, there's no time to think, how do I perceive of myself in that moment? How do I perceive of that person in that moment? What kind of sense of negativity, like some kind of intrinsic, we really don't have the time to do that. So for now, what we do is, like with this practice, doing the meditations, try to bring to mind a situation that has very recently, if you're lucky, you've had a recent event that made you happy, made you angry, just annoyed, or, it doesn't have to be like really full-blown anger, as I said. It could just be a slight resentment, a slight dislike of someone, of a situation, to bring that to mind. But please be careful, because the danger with doing this is becoming again angry, right? We get again sucked into this, and before we know, instead of meditating against anger, we meditate literally on anger, we make it stronger. Okay. So usually we say, when we get angry, we don't get a sense that, of course, it's our anger that's the real enemy. We get a sense that the person who did something, they are the real perpetrator, they are the problem. We don't look at the anger itself. Most of the time, the stronger the anger, the less we do this. So actually, the stronger the anger, the more we should see actually how this is really harming us. But it's the opposite is the case. If there's little anger, we may recognize it. Oh, my anger is the problem. The situation is really minor. But when it's a big thing, how much harder? Okay. And there are usually 9 negative thoughts that are often mentioned in the context of because we obsess about it. You know how mind goes on and now mind it goes again and again. So we're very good about obsessing about it. If it was just a short moment, it would be right. But we go over it and over it and over it. So there are 9 kind of thoughts that arise, they say. So one is, this person did this to me in the past. They're doing this now, and they're likely to do it again in the future. Likewise, this person did this to my friends and my relatives. They do it right now, and they're likely to do it in the future. And this person has helped my friends, has helped my enemies, has supported my enemies in the past, is doing it right now, and is likely to do it again in the future. So those are the 9 thoughts that we may obsess about, depending on how strong the anger is, depending on what the situation is. But yeah, I guess if they're if there's in particular like a really strong hatred towards another group of people, and there's like a real conflict, then if you help their enemy, if someone helps your enemy, then it becomes also a problem, right? So it's like a whole, it kind of...
Cleansing.
Pardon?
It's like a cleansing.
Yeah, it's like this kind. It's this kind of course, this is what anger does. It's like this is us and this is them. Okay, but we're not here. It's kind of more like a whole group. It becomes much more evasive, much more. It kind of pervades much more. Whereas if it's like a one-on-one kind of situation, but even then, there's people we don't like, and if then someone who doesn't, there are 2 people we don't like. And if one of them harms us, and they also help the other person we don't like, oh my God, that's just another reason to dislike them. Right? So anyway, those are the 9 thoughts that we're said to have in those situations of anger. So having said this, so in the context, therefore, of stopping impatience, or stopping the lack of anger, or the lack of patience with those who harm us, there are again 2 subdivisions to be just more detailed on this, because there's so much to it, there's so many aspects to consider. So stopping impatience with those who prevent our happiness and with those who cause us to suffer. That is one outline. Stopping impatience with those who prevent our happiness and cause us to suffer. So usually those go hand in hand. If someone prevents our happiness, they cause us to suffer, of course, and vice versa. That's one outline. And then stopping impatience with those who prevent our praise, fame, or honor. Not just someone giving us grief, not someone causing us suffering, but imagine someone talks bad about you and does things to destroy praise. You prevent other people, or you stop other people from that, whatever they say, would prevent other people from praising you. If you're famous, famous to a certain degree, or honored, you have a good reputation, that is destroyed. So, therefore, the second outline is stopping impatience with those who prevent your praise, fame, or honor, and those who have contempt for you or say offensive and unpleasant things to you. Okay? So the first one is much more just causing suffering, making you unhappy. The second one is someone who offends you, who abuses you, who destroys your good reputation. So, with regard to the first one, the person who prevents our happiness and just causes us grief, causes us suffering. The first, again, there's a subdivision, so it's a little confusing, but just never mind. It makes sense as we go through all of them in more detail. So showing that anger is unjustified and showing that compassion is appropriate. So for the person who causes us suffering, who prevents our happiness, becoming angry with them is not justified. Instead, being compassionate towards them is appropriate. So it's exactly the opposite reaction. We have a sense compassion is unjustified, anger is appropriate, right?